In 2008, philanthropic giving in the U.S. totaled $300 billion. That's more than the GDP of Colombia. And listen to this. From 1995 to 2005, the number of foundations in the U.S. increased by 77%. With so many resources directed at solving our social issues, why do they seem to be getting worse instead of better?
I consider it a battle, if not a war, for the soul of the nonprofit sector. It's about people's lives. These are life and death issues. Every dollar that's being spent to try to help people needs to help people. And the vast majority of it isn't helping anybody. So people are literally dying because money is wasted, because we're not creating high-performing organizations that really do meaningful work in so many cases.
Philanthropists have the job of trying to tackle those issues that have long proved resistant to great sums and great minds. So one of the things that we have to recognize is that philanthropy is tackling those issues that neither the private sector nor the government has figured out how to solve.
We know that today's philanthropic challenges are complex and varied, and that's why it's so important to make sure that our efforts to address them result in meaningful and measurable change.
If you're a runner, you want to know how well you did yesterday as compared to today. If you're trying to lose weight, the feedback comes from a scale. And for a nonprofit trying to achieve really difficult goals, reducing teen pregnancy, improving educational outcomes for poor kids, the need for that feedback is even more pressing because it's not as easy as stepping on a scale.
People say you can't do that, you can't track this stuff. It's ridiculous. You can't track it, you shouldn't do it. You just shouldn't, period. It's immoral. Really, you're taking somebody else's money to get in somebody else's life to try to make a difference. You better be showing you can make a difference, right?
And so the basic question is, well, how do you know? How do you know that the actions, the activities, the programs that you're conducting now are achieving your intended result? How do you know? What do you want to learn that will assure you, that will show you that what you hope is true is actually true?
The fact of the matter is that in order to know that your efforts are resulting in positive change, you must constantly track or measure progress towards your goals. A few years ago, the Latin American Youth Center, a multi-service nonprofit in Washington, D.C., began offering instruction to its male Latino participants in an effort to change their attitudes towards domestic violence. Soon, however, it became evident that the instruction was having the opposite effect. Instead of reducing violent attitudes and tendencies, the men in the program were actually becoming more accepting of violent behavior.
In other words, people's attitudes towards domestic violence were going in the wrong direction. They thought it was inevitable. They thought it was a proper expression of love between partners, completely the opposite of what we were teaching. Now, the good side of that story is that because we had a performance management system, we were able to identify that the results were going the wrong way, that the instructional methodology that we were using was flawed, and change the curriculum so that we really could turn around those attitudes and impressions towards domestic violence.
Because of their performance management strategy, in other words, their ability to track progress towards an intended result or outcome, LAYC was able to see that this instruction was not producing the intended results and that it was in fact causing harm. They were then able to make the necessary corrections to the curriculum.
We ultimately did turn those results around, and now for 2 years we've had statistically significant improvements in terms of better or more positive attitudes toward domestic violence in the correct direction. So now, after 2 years, we've changed the programming because of our performance management system and gotten the results that we expected.
So my question is, could your organization or an organization you fund have made this type of mid-course correction? I know mine couldn't have. My name is Kate Robinson, and the purpose of this film is to help nonprofit organizations and their funders to effectively manage to outcomes. I ran a statewide healthcare advocacy organization with a problem that will be familiar to most of you. We hadn't gotten clear about our goals, so we weren't able to track progress towards them. In other words, we couldn't make mid-course corrections because we didn't know where we were in relation to our goals, and we didn't know precisely what our goals were. We were like a ship at sea with no charted course and no ability to measure our bearings or where we were in relation to our goals.
There's no excuse for not having a clear picture of what one's trying to do. There is no reason why there's not a strategy around it. And I'm not talking about a big McKinsey or Bridgebrand report. I mean, just that they've thought it through, and that there's an understanding of what the outcomes are. And then they do the best they can to occasionally try to look at those. But I mean, even that alone is a huge step forward. Ask yourself this question. If I'm trying to do X down in your bowels of the organization, what is it I need to know to do X?
The complexity is less in measuring impact than it is initially for many people in being clear about what your goals are. Once you're clear about what your goals are, it is often not particularly difficult to measure impact.
One thing's for certain, lack of clear goals and lack of commitment to measuring progress towards them is a problem in our sector. If more organizations operated like LAYC in this instance, we could be much more effective and avoid doing things that don't work.